let's start. So the idea is to do this. First of all, let's explore, let's say, the top 3 critical success factors, let's say traditional critical success factors that are still valid, but they are not valid for all, let's say, the projects of all the types all around the world, for a specific type of project. And then let's try to falsify the critical success factor to say, okay, what happens if I don't have this critical success factor, if it's not available in my project, in my company, but especially in my project. So we will see what changes thanks to this change in the critical success factor, and then we will see what are the reasons behind the lack of a specific critical success factor. So we will do this during this presentation. So first of all, critical success factors. The first one, this is based on the research made by Pinto Slavin, that is maybe the most famous research in critical success factors. So the first one is the so-called project mission. I know that very often we don't use project mission anymore. Speaking about the wording, we don't longer use project mission. Very often we speak about the project scope, project objectives. So this is the translation of project mission. This is the most important critical success factor in, let's say, is the average of the average all around the world. Another critical success factor is the top manager support, the so-called project sponsorship. And the third position is we have project planning. During this presentation, we will try to falsify and see what happened for the critical success factor number 1 and 2. We don't have time. It's very simple. We don't have time to go through all the other factors, okay? So let's see, first of all, let's speak about the project mission. The idea is what happens if the critical success factor 1 is satisfied, that is, it's clear, but I will add also, if it's feasible and stable. That is, we have a clear project mission, that is, the project scope is clear, the project objectives are very clear. Well, nothing strange, that is, many of you, I guess, already know what is the story behind this, that is, we can approach the project by following this typical approach. It is the so-called waterfall approach. In a nutshell, we can say, okay, let's go through the different phases of the project. Maybe we may have also some interaction between the different phases, but mainly, let's say, we move from one phase to another. These are typical phases names, so we have the analysis, planning, execution, closure, and transfer. And at the end of the story, if again the critical success factor 1 is satisfied, we should be able to have a glass of wine. So that is the idea, that is, the project has been successful. Now, one of the good practices, I'm not mentioning best practice, but a good practice is, if the critical success factor 1 is satisfied, is that should apply the so-called front-end planning. There are also other names, so you can call it front-end loading, is exactly the same, but the idea is let's charge, so let's do a lot of analysis, a lot of planning before the project starts. So in this case, there is a little bit of science behind this, because it has been done a quite huge research, a sample of 609 projects. The total value is $37 billion, and these are the results of front-end planning. So 10% less about the project cost, so the total project budget, less compared to what? Less compared to other projects in the same sample that didn't apply correctly front-end planning. That is, people involved in this project didn't devote a lot of time in trying to analyzing and plan the project before the project starts. Remember, front-end planning means I do a lot of tasks before the project starts. I do a lot of analysis and planning before the project starts. So the result is 10% less project cost. The result is, on average, they are 7% shorter. Another measure was the number of changes, and they noticed that the amount of change is reduced by 5%. Okay. The source is the Construction Industry Institute, and the research has been made in 2012. Again, it's quite reliable because it's a very huge sample. Examples of front-end planning, projects where you can apply this type of approach. Well, for sure, construction project. for sure. The one on the left, this is actually Milan, where I live. These are the two skyscrapers, however. There is, I guess, I think something that is misunderstood, because a lot of people think that we cannot apply this logic in, for example, IT projects. Well, unfortunately, I mean, I do not agree with the statement, because IT projects are very heterogeneous. You can have very unstable projects, but also stable projects. One example is ERP projects. ERP projects are based on business processes, okay? Because normally you map in the system, you customize the system, you configure the system by, let's say, following the business processes. So business processes do not change every day. They change maybe sometime every a few years. So we can say, in this case, if people have the competencies, if the contract is right, so there are many if, of course, but if we have the right competencies, we can approach an ERP project just like a construction project. Why? Because the critical success factor number one is satisfied. That is, we know what we're speaking about. We know what is the project scope. We know what are the project objectives. That is, requirements are very stable. Why? Because they are based on business processes. Of course, they may become unstable if people do not have the right competences. They don't know what the company, how the company is running, of course. Go a little bit slower. Sorry. In this, so again, when the critical success factor number one is satisfied, what we I can also add must do, but let's stay with should. We should define schedule, budget, scope, and quality in detail. Very detailed. That is, because adding details, delving deeper, pays, we saw the figures in the previous slide. These changes, let's say, are exceptions. That is, if you have done a very good job, you will have just a few changes, and these changes modify the initial agreement. In this case, in order to manage changes in a professional and a proper way, you need robust change management processes. So this is, again, these are suggestions if the critical success factor one is satisfied. Now, I have some questions for you. In this setting, how you should describe, let's say, the main competencies slash behavior of the project manager? How you should describe the project manager, let's say, in a few words? You can use the chat to propose some ideas. Best project manager in this setting. Summarize the project manager in a few words. Great communication, experience and connect with the organization. Okay, these are, let's say, typical competencies slash behaviors that a project manager should have. As three types of project and competency communication, leadership and communication. Okay, you are stressing communication. Agree. Communication, let's say, is a skill that has to be there in all type of projects. I very like this, well organized, focus on execution. Oh, well planned. There's a suggestion. So I have summarized the project manager in this way. Also by using some cultural stereotype, if you want, so just by joke a little bit about the culture. So we have a Japanese construction engineer that is